In part 1, we got the first layer of dry pack placed, and it has a gradual slope from the outside walls to the drain. In this video, it's time to get our shower pan installed and our finished layer of dry pack in place. From that point, we'll be able to lay our floor tile. Before installing the shower pan, you'll notice that I have notched some areas in the corners of the original framing of the shower walls. The purpose of that is to allow me to fold the shower pan material into those places and secure them. That will allow the wall board, when it is installed, to not bulge out at the bottom. That's just a minor thing, but it makes for a better installation. There's really no big trick to placing the shower pan. You just want to make sure that you leave 3 or 4 inches of material above the finished tile floor. Also, only place screws around the very top edge of the shower pan around the perimeter. The only place to make a penetration then in the shower pan is right at the drain. You'll notice that I cut my hole so tight to the drain hole that I have to slice the material to get my bolts into their holes. Just want to make sure while you're fiddling with loose bolts that you don't accidentally drop one down the drain. Now you can tightly secure the bolts to the flange that holds the drain in place. The threaded part of the drain gives you a lot of room for adjustment. I'm going to be shooting for about an inch worth of fall from the wall to the drain. The minimum amount of slope you would want is 1/4 inch per foot. I always go quite a bit more than that. With the pan and drain in place, next comes another layer of dry pack. It's always a good idea to tape off the top of the drain to keep dry pack material from falling into it. And we'll get to the purpose for all the sticks shortly. The wire material I'm working on here is called metal lath, and I configure a piece of it to wrap around my step. If you've ever worked with lath before, you know that the less you have to handle it, the better off you are. So the Dremel is an ideal tool for cutting it. The 2x4 is helpful in getting crisp, straight bends in the lath, and then I just slip it into place over the step. On the inside of the step, I will tamp the dry pack material right up against the lath. Any lath that remains exposed after the dry pack is in will get a coat of thin set after I've laid the shower floor tile. The final thing I do to prepare the step for tile is to cut pieces of hardiebacker that I install with thin set over the top of the lath. Now I just need to make some final decisions about drain height, and we're ready to go with the next step. Part 1 of this series goes into some detail about how to mix dry pack. The recipe I've always used is 1 part Portland cement to 4 parts sand. The 50-pound bag of sand converts to about 6 shovelfuls with the size shovel I have. So 2 50-pound bags of sand give me 12 shovelfuls of sand in my mud box. And to that I add 3 shovelfuls of Portland cement to give me the ratio that I need. Many years ago, as about a 22-year-old, I took a summer job with a tile company in Abilene, Texas. First time I ever mixed dry pack, I was working one day with an old tile setter who was getting ready to retire. When we arrived at the house where we were installing the shower floor, he gave me about 30 seconds worth of instruction on how to mix the dry pack and then went inside. Last thing he said to me was, make sure you don't mix it too wet. So I got to mixing the dry materials together, but once I got to the point of adding water, I began to wonder to myself, what is too wet as compared to cement coming out of a cement mixer? So I did the best with the information I had, and by the time I finished, I was pretty happy with the result. Pretty soon he came to check on me, and the first thing I heard was, "It's too wet, it's too wet." He started kicking buckets and throwing stuff. He carried on like that for a lot longer than I thought was necessary. You would have thought I'd burned the house down. Fortunately, rather than complaining that this was the first time I'd ever done this, I blurted out, all right, what do I do to fix this? You want me to start over or what?" Well, that stopped him in his tracks. He picked up the shovel, threw a few shovelfuls of sand on the pile, and chopped through it a couple of times. Then he picked up a handful of the mix, showed it to me, and squeezed it and said, "If you can see water, it's too wet." I never heard a cross word out of him again, and through the rest of the summer he taught me the basics of setting tile, as well as installing laminate countertops and wood flooring. And that summer job changed the course of my life and affects me to this very day. The lesson I learned was anytime you have the opportunity to be around someone who knows a trade or a craft that you don't know, take advantage of it. Young or old, regardless of your age, learn everything they're willing to teach you. Getting this dry pack section of flooring in place is really the most critical to the whole process. It's going to determine how well your floor drains. I started by aligning the drain as best I could with the walls. Then I packed mud tightly around the drain to hold it in place. Now the reason for the sticks is apparent. They're straight and they're called screed sticks. I'm setting them in the mud at the height that I want the finished floor to be above the shower drain. I will install them around the perimeter of the shower, and once their height is correct and they're level, then they get packed in place with the mud. The first batch of dry pack mix gives me enough mud to do about half the shower floor. The shower is approximately 48 inches by 48 inches. This is the final opportunity to check the alignment of the drain once again. Once this process is now completed, the drain is set. While I'm distributing the mud around the floor with my trowel, I'm trying to get it just a little higher than it ultimately needs to be. When you're packing the mud down, if you hear kind of a thud, that means that you need to keep packing. When you hear the trowel slap the surface of the mud, you know it's pretty well compacted. Once the floor is near its finished height, you can pop the sticks out and then tightly fill in those slots.
Again, a stick with a notch in it that matches the thickness of the tile. I'll use that to cut the mud down at the drain to that level, and that way the tile will then flush out with the top of the drain. Probably be just a little bit above the top of the drain. Then I'm going to taper it out all the way to where my sticks were, and those areas which are now level with the rest of the mud. You just get a feel for this as you go, and you can see how the stick is beginning to cut as you move out. You take down this area up by the drain, which is built up quite a bit higher. And then I'm going to basically be flushing everything out with these areas that are about 2 inches away from my pan, which is where my sticks were.
So the goal is to ultimately cut a straight line from the shower drain all the way out to the wall, and then carry that straight line all the way around the shower. Once you have an area cut down to a finished line that you know is good, continue tamping it and then filling areas that may feel a little soft. This is a time when you can really begin to start hearing the trowel slapping the surface of the mud as it gets more and more compacted. You can use your fingertips in areas like this, particularly around the drain, to make sure you don't have any soft spots in your mud. You can be as meticulous as you want to be, because this is going to be the ultimate surface that your floor tile is set to. And then finally trowel the floor just like you would a finished concrete slab. In doing this, you're going to raise moisture to the surface and give you a hard layer on top of your dry pack that serves as a perfect surface to apply thin set to and set your tile. Let this dry overnight and it'll be ready to go. Even though the floor dries really hard, remember that it's primarily sand, and so you want to get your tile set and grouted before you have any substantial traffic on it. There's really no big trick to setting the floor tile. I like to start at the drain and work out from there. It's a good idea to work small areas because the floor will cause the thin set to set up rapidly. Try to mix the thin set to a consistency that allows you time to work with it but doesn't create too much squeeze out into the joints of the tile. I also make sure that once the tile is set in place that I individually push each piece into the thinset to make sure that it's stuck well. Lastly, the closer you get to the wall, you'll begin to run into more alignment issues because you are setting the tile on a curved surface. So you just work with that as needed. I use a piece of tile to hold the metal lath against the brick while the thinset dries. After the grout is dry, I'm ready to set the rest of the hardiebacker on the wall. The thing I like about this application process is that the wallboard and the tile are resting on the floor at completion. And the floor is absolutely directing the water to the drain. One thing I do when installing the wallboard is that I never drill into the shower pan, so I stop my holes above where the shower pan terminates. So there you go, everything you ever wanted to know about building a shower floor but were too afraid to ask. I hope you found these videos helpful, and if so, click the button to subscribe to my channel. Comments and questions are always welcome. Thanks for watching.